Now, for the past few months, Cuba has been in the grip of a crippling fuel crisis. People on the island have had to endure days-long queues for petrol as well as widespread blackouts.
Cuba, with its colorful streets and lush landscapes, is not as it seems, making their postcard-perfect images a deliberate lie that hides a darker reality. The island faces deep social, economic, and political struggles that have driven many to migrate, leaving the streets bare with the truth for everyone to see. What hidden struggles will you find? How do these issues shape Cuban lives? Join us as we uncover the dark side of Cuba. Here are 21 shocking things they always hide. Number 21. Economic struggles. Cuba has faced a severe economic crisis for 5 consecutive years, exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic and long-standing United States sanctions. The country's reliance on importing 70% of its food and fuel has become problematic due to declining income from tourism and sugar production. By 2024, tourism, a key industry, was devastated, with hotels in disrepair as visitor numbers plummeted. The sugar industry also struggled, with production falling to just 66% of normal levels, causing a foreign currency shortage essential for imports. Agriculture has been hit hard as well. In 2023, key staples like pork, rice, and beans saw over an 80% drop in production, while egg production fell by 50%. This has led to rising food prices and widespread scarcity. Fuel shortages have further crippled the economy, limiting public transportation and freight capacity to just 35% of 2019 levels, severely slowing the delivery of goods. Power outages have become a daily challenge, affecting homes, hospitals, and businesses. Hospitals, in particular, are suffering, with a 30% reduction in surgeries in 2023 due to a lack of medical supplies and frequent blackouts. The fuel shortages and electricity disruptions have brought much of Cuba's agriculture and essential services to a standstill, worsening the crisis for its citizens. Number 20. Unusual street performer. Leno Thomason, known as the Iron Man of Cuba, has captured attention for his extreme street performances, which involve striking his body with a hammer. Starting this intense practice at 15, Thomason, now 32, hits himself up to 1,000 times daily, demonstrating extraordinary endurance and pain tolerance. His unique act first went viral in 2020, when a video showed him punching and elbowing a concrete wall. Performing on Cuba's streets, Thomason also invites others to test his strength by hitting him with a hammer and doing push-ups with people on his back. After years of conditioning, he claims not to feel pain from these extreme acts, crediting his hammer-based routine with toughening his body. He views this practice as a personal journey, having struck himself millions of times to build his resilience. Thomason's act isn't just about strength. It reflects the challenging conditions faced by Cuban street performers, who often rely on such unique feats for financial support. Street performance is a long-standing tradition in Cuba, with performers using various skills, music, dance, and physical endurance to entertain and make a living. Number 19. Vintage car culture. In Cuba, vintage cars are more than just relics. They are a vital part of daily life and culture. The country boasts one of the largest collections of classic cars, some dating back to the early 1900s. These iconic vehicles, affectionately known as yank tanks or maquinas, are a hallmark of Cuban streets. Preserving these cars is managed by vintage car clubs spread across Cuba, each responsible for maintaining and restoring their own fleet of around 431 classic vehicles. Notably, the 1905 Cadillac is recognized as a national treasure. The Havana City History Office oversees these clubs, ensuring the historical integrity of the cars through a strict approval process for repairs and parts replacements. Repairing these vintage cars is challenging due to the scarcity of original parts, necessitating the use of modern components or adaptations from brands like Hyundai, Mitsubishi, or Toyota. Diesel engines are particularly favored for their efficiency and availability. Owning a vintage car in Cuba represents a significant financial and personal investment. Many Cubans become adept mechanics to maintain their vehicles. Beyond transportation, these cars are crucial for income. Families often rent them for interprovincial travel, earning up to $2,000 a month. Additionally, colorful vintage cars are used as taxis, known as almendrones, providing an appealing ride for both tourists and locals. Number 18. Famous Cuban cigars. Cuban cigars, or habanos, are globally recognized symbols of luxury and craftsmanship, revered in over 150 countries. With some high-end boxes costing thousands of dollars, these cigars have gained iconic status. The meticulous cigar-making process has remained largely unchanged for over 200 years, involving around 500 handmade steps from seed to final product. Cuba's unique climate and mineral-rich soils, especially in the Pinar del Rio province, contribute to the distinct flavor of its tobacco. Cuban cigars rose to fame in the 1960s, thanks to Fidel Castro's bodyguard, Bienvenido Chicho Perez. Castro, impressed by a particular cigar crafted by Eduardo Rivera, established a factory to produce them. This history, combined with the island's perfect growing conditions, high humidity, tropical temperatures, and rich soil, gives Cuban cigars their distinctive appeal. Every year, Havana hosts a cigar festival, attracting enthusiasts from over 70 countries to celebrate brands like Cohiba, Partagas, and Montecristo. Visitors can tour tobacco farms and witness master cigar rollers at work. Cuban cigars also hold a place in political history. During the Cold War, the CIA plotted to assassinate Castro using exploding cigars, though this plan was never executed. Additionally, the United States trade embargo on Cuba, imposed in 1962, has made Cuban cigars illegal in the United States for decades, adding to their allure. Number 17. Cuban migration challenges. Cuban migration has surged dramatically in recent years, with over 270,000 Cubans, about 2.5% of the population, caught trying to enter the United States illegally between 2021 and 2022. This rise is largely driven by Cuba's severe economic crisis, with the average monthly wage at just $157, making it difficult for many to afford basic necessities. Many Cubans choose to travel through Nicaragua, which doesn't require a visa for Cuban citizens, and then rely on human trafficking networks to reach the United States. This perilous journey can cost up to $7,000 per person, a hefty amount for most Cubans. The Cuban government has historically imposed strict immigration controls, making legal departure challenging and often accompanied by bureaucratic hurdles and high fees. The mass migration has profound effects, straining Cuba's already struggling economy, causing social upheaval with family separations, and contributing to a significant brain drain as educated professionals leave. For the United States, this influx poses challenges in border control and immigration policy. The United States Cuban Adjustment Act of 1966 allows Cubans who reach United States soil to apply for permanent residency after 1 year. This trend is not unprecedented. Cuba has experienced several significant waves of emigration since the 1959 revolution, including the Mariel boat lift in 1980 and the 1994 rafter crisis. The ongoing migration issue, compounded by Cuba's economic struggles and the long-standing United States embargo, remains a complex and emotional topic for Cubans, both on the island and abroad. Number 16. Limited internet access. Internet access in Cuba has long been a challenge, with the country lagging behind much of the world in digital connectivity. In 2011, only about 25% of Cubans had any form of internet access. The situation began to improve in 2018 with the introduction of public Wi-Fi hotspots, with nearly 500 locations offering high-speed access by January of that year. However, home and mobile internet remained largely unaffordable for many due to high costs. At $2 per hour, internet access was out of reach for many Cubans whose average monthly wages ranged from $7 to $30. As a result, people often resorted to downloading data onto USB drives for offline sharing. External factors also affect Cuba's internet landscape. The United States embargo restricts American companies from operating in Cuba, limiting access to popular online services. Apps like Skype and WhatsApp are blocked, and Apple and Google app stores do not allow downloads by Cuban users. Despite these barriers, Cubans have shown remarkable adaptability. They have developed their own social media platforms, such as Red Social and La Tendedera, and rely on El Paquete Semanal, an offline collection of digital content distributed on hard drives for entertainment and information. Recent years have seen some progress. The Cuban government introduced 3G mobile internet in 2018 and 4G in 2019, By 2021, about 7.7 million Cubans, out of a population of 11 million, had internet access, primarily through mobile devices. Despite improvements, Cuba still faces significant challenges in achieving widespread, affordable internet access. Number 15. Spiritual beliefs and customs. Cuban spirituality is a rich tapestry woven from diverse beliefs and customs that reflect the country's cultural heritage. A key figure in Cuban spiritual life is Saint Lazarus, depicted in tattered yellow clothes with a wide-brimmed hat and accompanied by dogs. This image originates from a legend where dogs miraculously healed his wounds. Many Cubans keep a statue of Saint Lazarus at home, leaving coins nearby daily. On December 17th, Saint Lazarus's Day, they use these coins to buy offerings such as wine, candles, sweets, and cigarettes. Cuban spiritual practices also influence customs related to death and luck. When an elderly person dies, a string measuring their height is placed in the casket to prevent the deceased from taking their living partner. Stepping on horse manure is considered lucky, a belief rooted in the historical use of horses for transportation. Spirituality even intersects with education in Cuba. Students sometimes write their teacher's name on paper and place it in the freezer before exams, believing this practice will help them pass. Cuban spirituality is largely shaped by Santeria, a blend of African, European, and indigenous beliefs. Developed during the colonial period, when African slaves combined their traditional practices with Roman Catholicism, about 70% of Cubans are estimated to practice some form of Santeria. On New Year's Eve, many Cubans partake in a unique tradition by taking their suitcases for a walk around the block, hoping to attract travel opportunities in the new year. This often results in lively processions through the streets, accompanied by music and celebration. Number 14. The phenomenon of paladares. A distinctive aspect of Cuban culture is the emergence of paladars, privately run restaurants operating out of people's homes. Originating in the 1990s amid economic hardships and government restrictions, paladars offer a personal and homemade dining experience that highlights Cuba's vibrant culinary traditions. Unlike government-run establishments, these informal dining spots provide tourists with the chance to enjoy authentic Cuban meals in a relaxed, homey atmosphere. Paladares feature traditional Cuban dishes like ropa vieja, arroz con pollo, and tostones, often prepared with locally sourced ingredients. Some also offer modern dishes that blend Cuban flavors with international influences. As their popularity has grown, paladares have become a key component of the Cuban tourism experience, offering a more intimate alternative to formal restaurants. Many paladares are family-run, providing diners with personal stories and cultural insights, enriching the overall dining experience. These establishments not only offer a unique window into the daily lives and creativity of Cubans, but also contribute to the local economy by supporting families and preserving culinary traditions passed down through generations. Some paladares have gained international acclaim for their innovative takes on Cuban cuisine, allowing them to expand and further impact the local economy. Overall, paladares embody the resilience and resourcefulness of the Cuban people, turning their kitchens into successful businesses despite economic challenges. For visitors, exploring paladares offers a genuine taste of Cuban culture, beyond the typical tourist areas, showcasing the island's rich food heritage and the spirit of its people. Number 13. Rationing system. In Cuba, the rationing system, known locally as la libreta, is crucial to daily life. Introduced in March 1962 in response to United States economic sanctions, this system aims to ensure fair distribution of essential goods during economic hardships. Over 60 years later, the ration card system remains in place, helping Cubans access necessary items like rice, milk, and bread at state-run stores. The ration card is a small booklet with around 20 pages, serving over 3.6 million households. Each household receives a fixed allocation of essential goods, determined by the government based on family size. These goods are sold at much lower prices than those in open markets, providing some financial relief in a country with generally low income levels. However, the rationed quantities often fall short of meeting household needs completely. Cubans can use a combination of their ration card and cash to purchase additional items at reduced prices. Goods like rice, beans, eggs, and sausages are only available through the ration card, whereas foreigners living in Cuba must buy goods at higher prices in markets or supermarkets as they do not receive ration cards. The system has undergone adjustments over time, particularly in response to economic fluctuations. For instance, in 2019, due to tightening United States sanctions, the government limited chicken purchases to 1 per person at supermarkets. Despite its challenges, such as often insufficient quantities, the rationing system remains a vital part of life in Cuba, reflecting ongoing efforts to ensure basic necessities are fairly distributed. Number 12. Complex payment system. Cuba's payment system is notoriously complex, creating confusion for both visitors and locals. In 2021, the government sought to simplify this by unifying the Cuban peso and the convertible peso, but the outcome was an even more intricate system. Today, Cuba uses 4 currencies: Cuban pesos, United States dollars, euros, and moneda libremente convertible, a virtual currency introduced in 2019. The MLC is loaded with dollars and used only in state-run stores, with no cash conversion available. The Cuban peso has multiple exchange rates, including ones for businesses, individuals, and an unofficial street rate, adding further complexity. This multi-currency system means that payment methods vary depending on the location, such as restaurants or stores, and prices may be listed in different currencies. This convoluted system stems from Cuba's economic challenges and the United States trade embargo imposed since 1962. The introduction of different currencies was intended to address economic pressures and attract foreign investment. For tourists, navigating this system requires diligence. It's essential to confirm which currency is accepted before making purchases, as some places may offer different prices based on the currency used. An informal currency exchange market has emerged, with some Cubans adept at providing better rates than official channels. Despite its difficulties, this multi-currency system has become integral to daily life in Cuba. Locals have adapted by carrying various currencies and mentally converting prices. For visitors, it offers a glimpse into the country's complex economic situation and cultural adaptation. Number 11. Tourism infrastructure issues. Cuba's tourism infrastructure is grappling with major issues due to the ongoing economic crisis. Despite attempts to enhance the hotel sector, many hotels and tourist services are in poor condition. New hotels have been constructed, but a significant number of existing ones are run down and not meeting the advertised standards. Buildings along popular tourist areas often appear dilapidated, mirroring the country's broader economic difficulties. A key problem is the government's focus on expanding hotel capacity while neglecting crucial public infrastructure. Cuban towns and cities face severe issues with housing, sanitation, water supply, and waste management. The housing crisis has persisted for decades, with many homes and public spaces in dangerous disrepair, leading to unsafe living conditions and, in some cases, building collapses. This neglect affects both locals and visitors, creating unhealthy and hazardous environments. Basic services also fall short. Many restaurants and tourist businesses struggle with inconsistent, low-quality service due to food shortages, frequent power outages, and a lack of essential goods. Visitors often experience slow or indifferent service, although a few tourist spots do offer better service. The shortage of everyday goods, such as food and beverages, is evident even in tourist-heavy areas, reflecting broader challenges in meeting both domestic and tourist needs. Overall, Cuba's tourism sector is hindered by its economic struggles and infrastructural shortcomings, impacting the quality of experiences for visitors. Number 10. Transportation in Cuba. Cuba's transportation system is a fascinating mix of old-world charm and practical adaptations shaped by economic realities. The streets are filled with a colorful array of vintage cars, bicycles, and horse-drawn carriages, creating a nostalgic atmosphere. Traffic laws in Cuba are strict, leading to cautious driving. Drivers rarely exceed about 68 miles per hour and are careful around slow-moving vehicles like horse-drawn carriages. This cautious behavior extends to railway crossings and intersections, where drivers must stop and check even at abandoned crossings. An intriguing aspect of Cuban transportation is the hitchhiking culture. Government vehicles with blue license plates are required to pick up hitchhikers traveling in the same direction, a system known as El Botero. This helps alleviate the strain on Cuba's limited public transportation. Public transport in Cuba, though improving, still faces issues. Buses are often crowded, but Cubans have developed a system for orderly queuing and boarding, reflecting their resourceful approach to everyday challenges. The reliance on bicycles and horse-drawn carriages, particularly in rural areas, is a practical response to fuel shortages and economic constraints, providing eco-friendly transport solutions. Cuba's socialist policies influence its transportation landscape. The government controls vehicle imports, resulting in a prevalence of pre-1959 American cars and Soviet-era vehicles. Recently, newer models, mostly Chinese-made, have appeared, mainly for taxis and government use. Overall, Cuba's transportation system highlights the resilience and creativity of its people, blending historic and modern elements to navigate economic and social challenges. This unique transportation scene offers a window into Cuba's history, economy, and culture. Number 9. Cash is king. When visiting Cuba, cash is essential, as credit and debit cards from the United States are not accepted. It's important to exchange your money before your trip, ideally at the airport upon arrival, since ATMs have high fees and poor exchange rates. Cuba imposes an extra 10% fee on United States dollars, a policy introduced in 2004 to counteract United States sanctions and reduce reliance on United States currency. Therefore, bringing other currencies such as euros or Canadian dollars is advisable for exchange. Cuba's currency system has been complex. For years, the Cuban peso and the Cuban convertible peso coexisted, with the CUC introduced in 1994 to replace the United States dollar in tourist areas. However, in January 2021, Cuba began phasing out the CUC as part of currency unification efforts. Tourists should carry enough cash for daily expenses like meals, transportation, and souvenirs, as tourist areas often have higher prices. Given that the average monthly salary in Cuba is around $87 as of 2021, tipping is appreciated but not required in the service industry. Lastly, be cautious of counterfeit bills. While not widespread, counterfeit currency does exist, so familiarize yourself with Cuban money and always count your change carefully. Number 8. Unique aspects of Cuban life. Cuba's unique lifestyle reflects its rich history and culture in several ways. One notable aspect is its historical relationship with Coca-Cola. Following the Cuban Revolution in the early 1960s, Cuba, alongside North Korea, banned Coca-Cola. This ban lasted until 2015, and while Coca-Cola remains rare and expensive, Cubans primarily drink a local soda called Tu Cola, which is more affordable. Despite this scarcity, rum is widely available, highlighting Cuba's renowned rum production. Another striking feature is the prevalence of classic cars. The streets of Cuba are filled with vintage American cars from the 1950s and Soviet-made vehicles from the 1970s and 80s. These cars, symbols of Cuban culture, were imported before the United States embargo and have been meticulously maintained by Cubans. Although some newer cars from China have been imported for police and taxi use since 2009, modern vehicles are still uncommon. Additionally, there is a strict ban on using Fidel Castro's name for public places or awards. After he died 2016, the Cuban National Assembly enacted a law prohibiting public memorials, statues, or streets named after him, in line with Castro's wish to avoid a cult of personality. Despite this, his image is still present at public events related to the Cuban Revolution, ensuring his legacy endures in a different form. Number 7. Human rights concerns in Cuba. Cuba's human rights record has faced extensive international criticism, with numerous organizations accusing the government of systemic abuses. Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch report that the Cuban government frequently arbitrarily imprisons dissidents, political opponents, and independent activists, designating many as prisoners of conscience. The International Committee for Democracy in Cuba, comprising former statesmen, supports the dissident movement in the country. Concerns about the legal system's lack of due process are prominent. Although there has been some relaxation of restrictions on religious expression, the government maintains stringent control over religious institutions and individuals. Censorship is also a major issue, with the government suppressing critics, activists, and those who dissent. The Cuban Commission for Human Rights and National Reconciliation, an independent group considered illegal by the government, reports frequent arbitrary detentions. Amnesty International highlights tactics such as discriminatory layoffs and harassment used to silence critics. Despite these issues, Cuba is noted for its advancements in women's rights. The country has made significant progress in gender equality and the empowerment of women in various aspects of society. Number 6. Expressing discontent and facing punishment in Cuba. In Cuba, the socialist government exerts strict control over the flow of information and harshly punishes citizens who openly criticize the regime. Those who speak out against the government face severe consequences, with prison sentences starting at 10 years for opposing socialist ideology. This suppression of dissent is well documented, with Cuba ranked as not free by Freedom House, and Amnesty International frequently reporting on arbitrary detentions and harassment of peaceful activists. Despite these risks, some Cubans continue to voice their frustrations. Economic hardships and limited freedoms have led to sporadic protests, most notably in 2021, when thousands marched in the largest anti-government demonstrations seen in decades. Chanting slogans like "Down with the dictatorship," protesters called for greater freedoms, but the government's response was swift and severe, resulting in widespread arrests and harsh sentences. One well-known case is that of José Daniel Ferrer, a human rights defender repeatedly imprisoned for his activism. In 2019, he was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison, accused of assaulting a fellow dissident, a charge he denies. His story is one of many, highlighting the harsh realities for those challenging the Cuban government. In the midst of this, Cubans have found creative ways to express their discontent, from underground art to independent journalism and small protests. Number 5. Surviving in crumbling homes. Living conditions in Cuba are notably challenging, reflecting deep-seated issues within the country's economic and infrastructural systems. Most Cuban homes are over 40 years old, showing significant wear and tear. The structures often suffer from peeling paint, crumbling plaster, and rusted windows, indicating a lack of maintenance and modernization. Inside these homes, the situation is even more concerning. Stairs are frequently broken, walls and ceilings are cracked, and many homes lack basic amenities such as reliable electricity and functioning plumbing. This makes everyday tasks difficult and underscores the severe living conditions faced by many Cubans. These issues are not confined to the outskirts of Havana, but are also evident in the city's central areas, where one might expect better living standards. The pervasive poverty can be attributed to Cuba's socialist economic system, where resource allocation and essential services have been insufficient. Despite these hardships, Cubans exhibit remarkable resilience. They often find creative ways to cope with their circumstances, such as renting out rooms to tourists. This entrepreneurial spirit highlights their ability to adapt and survive despite limited resources. However, the impact of these harsh living conditions is profound, affecting both the physical and psychological well-being of the Cuban people. They strive to maintain dignity and normalcy amid crumbling infrastructure and inadequate services, demonstrating both their struggles and their enduring spirit. Number 4. Cuba's free education and healthcare. Cuba's commitment to providing free education and healthcare stands out amid the country's economic difficulties. Unlike many nations, where these services come with hefty price tags, Cuba ensures that its citizens receive both without financial strain. In Cuba, there are no private hospitals or schools, as the government maintains full control over these sectors, in line with its socialist principles. This system allows Cubans to access education from primary school to university, as well as healthcare services ranging from routine checkups to complex medical procedures, all free of charge. As a result, Cuba boasts one of the highest literacy rates globally, and its healthcare system is noted for its broad accessibility, with a high doctor-to-patient ratio. However, challenges. Cuba with colorful streets and lush landscapes is not as it seems, making their postcard-perfect images a deliberate lie that hides a darker reality. The island faces deep social, economic, and political struggles that have driven many to migrate, leaving the streets bare. Number 3. The shortcomings of Cuba's socialist system. Cuba's socialist system, once seen as a beacon of hope, has faced mounting challenges, leaving citizens grappling with unfulfilled promises and growing discontent. While the state claims responsibility for providing basic necessities like housing, food, and water, in practice, many Cubans endure long queues for essentials such as bread and milk. Resource shortages and bureaucratic inefficiencies plague everyday life, creating a stark contrast between the government's promises and the harsh realities on the ground. Economic hardship is exacerbated by the prevalence of the black market, where basic goods are available at inflated prices. This informal economy highlights the failures of official channels to meet the population's needs. Additionally, the government's control of information, restricting internet access and freedom of expression, adds to the sense of isolation and frustration experienced by many. Despite these overwhelming challenges, the resilience of the Cuban people shines through. Citizens have demonstrated remarkable ingenuity in adapting to difficult circumstances, from maintaining antiques with limited resources to finding creative ways to express their discontent. As Cuba's socialist experiment continues, the tension between ideology and lived experience serves as a cautionary tale, reminding the world that idealism must confront reality. The Cuban people's struggle for a better future remains ongoing, driven by their deep desire for change. Number 2. Navigating Cuba as a visitor. Traveling to Cuba offers a unique and enriching experience, but visitors should be prepared for several challenges. The first hurdle is obtaining a tourist card, which requires a plane ticket and a $25 fee from a Cuban consulate. This step reflects Cuba's strict control over entry. Once in Cuba, tourists often face high costs, especially for transportation. For example, a short taxi ride to the city center may cost tourists between $40 and $50, while locals pay just $7 to $8. Negotiating prices is common, as many goods and services are marked up for foreigners. For instance, a guided tour in a vintage car can cost $20 to $25 per hour, adding to the expenses. Currency exchange can also be tricky, with an informal black market presenting unfavorable rates. Tourists need to be cautious to avoid financial losses when exchanging money through these unofficial channels. The economic gap between locals and visitors complicates the travel experience further. While many Cubans face economic difficulties, tourists often have greater financial resources, making them targets for inflated prices. However, those who understand the local context and are prepared to haggle can still enjoy Cuba's vibrant culture. By being aware of these challenges and adapting to the local environment, tourists can successfully navigate the complexities of traveling in Cuba and enjoy the island's rich cultural offerings. Number 1. Cuba's musical and culinary escape. Amidst the pervasive hardships faced by the Cuban people, music and rum offer an escape from daily struggles. In Cuba, where economic and social challenges are common, the vibrant embrace of music and culinary traditions provides a vital refuge. Music is a cornerstone of Cuban life, with genres like salsa, son cubano, and rumba deeply embedded in the national identity. Despite the difficulties, Cubans find solace and joy in these rhythms, which serve not only as entertainment, but also as a means of expression and community bonding. Rum and cigars, integral to Cuban culture, represent more than just indulgence. They are products of the island's rich agricultural and manufacturing history, linking Cubans to their heritage and providing economic support for many. These elements are cherished symbols of resilience, offering comfort and continuity amidst the challenges of daily life. However, the cultural escape provided by these traditions is tinged with bittersweet reflections. The initial excitement and hope of the revolution have given way to a more resigned outlook as time has passed. The sentiment that those people have aged and they sigh as they remember the old days underscores the contrast between past idealism and present realities. Despite the evolving challenges, the Cuban spirit endures through music and tradition. This ability to find joy and comfort in cultural practices highlights the profound resilience of the Cuban people. Thanks for watching. See you in our next video.